The president is floating the idea that gang members over the age of 14 should be prosecuted as adults. And now he's sending his final warning that if crime in our nation's capital is not dealt with properly, the federal government may be forced to take over. Watch.
Somebody from DOGE was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C. And either they're going to straighten their act out in the terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run.
Well, overall, violent crime has been trending downward across America. Murder, rape, robbery, all happening less than it was in 2023 compared to this time last year. But when you isolate our nation's capital, the statistics are eye-popping. The homicide rate, when compared to other major U.S. cities, is horrible. D.C. has the fourth worst murder rate in the U.S. for 2024, with nearly 96% of those homicide suspects being men. More than 70% carried out by suspects between the ages of 18 and 34. And just last month, a congressional intern was murdered in the crossfire of a drive-by shooting. The suspect or suspects are still at large. And now his mom recently spoke with Fox News Digital, has given an emotional plea to lawmakers sitting on the D.C. Council.
What the heck are these people doing? What is the council doing? How are they protecting the people of D.C.? I don't care what neighborhood you're from. These people are not being protected. This isn't a joke anymore. People are getting killed.
Charles, why is this happening in our nation's capital?
Well, it's happening in other places, too. But, yeah, the statistics are obviously eye-popping there. I think the part about the gangs is really important, and also culture. You know, a year ago, my niece was shot.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she was shot on my block, my old neighborhood, my old block, and she was there visiting. They were actually there. There was a memorial for a friend I grew up with, her son, who had been murdered the year before. Mm-hmm. And so she was also shot, and my niece had 4 hours emergency surgery. What was really nuts is, like, so talking to the detectives, they had a suspect, a young person, 15 years old. They kind of knew who it was. They waited and waited and waited until he was finally arrested for murdering someone else. Mm.
Wow.
Yeah. And this kid's father was on every TV channel in the Tri-State area crying uncontrollably. And I just said to myself, they knew who this kid was. Mm. They knew who he was, and they didn't go after him for whatever reason. And in the meantime, the culture, particularly this drill music, which has been a problem for more than a decade, is getting worse and worse and worse. And it's something that's got to be identified, acknowledged, and dealt with. And
you know how hard that is, though, because people will scream free speech and they'll say, but you
can't. Yeah, I mean, the music, I don't know you can outlaw music per se, right, but I think you can have a counter message. There's got to be some sort of counter message to all of this, or it's just going to get worse, and it will be hidden in statistics.
Wow. Emily, what would change if President Trump does what he thinks that he might have to do to make the district safe?
Yeah, he would be able to utilize federal resources. So instead of the state and local municipalities and authorities having a feckless prosecution rate and law enforcement that is hamstrung by city councils, instead he could say, you break the law, you get prosecuted, you get sentenced, you get put away. And they're actually put a police presence out there so that people who are walking down the street can actually be protected. And I want to share a little bit more of the full story, because as you read those really troubling and grim statistics, Harris, when you talked about, almost 96% of the homicide suspects in the district are male, well, almost 97% of those are Black American. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the victims, 18 to 34 and over 80+% of those are Black American. So for everyone saying Black Lives Matter, please, God, look to these communities, because Black lives are being destroyed. And when you look at the amount of the suspects there in D.C., many of them come from Maryland, from certain cities that also have a very lax approach to crime, or they are hamstrung, or there's nothing we can do, and they have to wait for more to be murdered before they can make arrests. There is clearly a systemic rot and a malignance that is happening in a bunch of inner cities. And the people that are suffering the most are the Black American communities, and the infection is spreading. So everyone that burned down the country a few years ago needs to step up now and support federalization, legislation, and law and order enforcement.
Well, and we know President Trump is serious because after the death of the killing of George Floyd, he told me in an interview, he said, look, I'll do what is necessary to bring the peace. When you were talking, you know what I thought of? Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. I mean, what just happened in Cincinnati?
Yes.
It looked like this, like just complete lawlessness. The woman punched and beaten and lost consciousness, right? I mean, it's just out of control.
You know, when young people are learning about violence over values, you know we have a problem. Now, we know in New York City, bail reform, they're giving kids a break when they get, you know, involved with some kind of crime. But this is going too far because now we're seeing more and more young people involved with the most violent crimes out there. What is going on? I know you talked about drill music. I remember when my son was younger, there was a big effort to watch what they were doing with video games. You know, some of those video games were so wild. It desensitized violence. Right. Is that what these kids, is this the result now we're seeing with these young kids?
The irony is you said violence over values. In this case, it's violence equals values. That is your value. You know, to have a presence, to be someone, to have an imprint in your community, to be, intimidate others. That's the value system.
Yeah, it's very gang activity. It's very mob activity.
Yeah, but it's on an individual level too. But it's just, you know, it keeps going further and further to violence being so careless and so reckless and just so inhumane.
Leslie, you live in a big city that's seen a lot over the last few years. I mean, the fires in LA, you've been through so much. And so we know about the looting and some of the things that have happened in downtown Los Angeles. And so you see some of this too.
Yeah, downtown Los Angeles, that was 3 blocks. And I wouldn't, liken that. But if you talk about, I agree with some of what Charles and Emily said regarding the systemic issues and regarding, the violence begets violence. But, I'm sorry, it's a lot more than, video games or movies or music. You don't have the proper resources put into education. You don't have opportunity. So if I'm not sitting around listening to music, where is the opportunity in that community? And then in addition to that, when you talk about having resources, the federal government says they want to have less money. If you make D.C. a state, you get the same thing. You're not draining the federal government. And then you don't have and Republicans should like this because they want more state power and they want less federal government involved in our lives.
Your last thought, Charles?
To blame this on city budgets is outrageous. This is a cultural problem. People have been much poorer than people are right now and did not have this kind of violence. There wasn't runaway murders like there was, and there were people who were living and dying based on whether the crop came in or not. We have been a destitute, much poorer country. Much more, we've been in much worse conditions than this and didn't have the kind of violent outburst that we're having right now. I think that's an excuse that
I never said that.
I think it's an excuse that provides cover, that says what you do is okay because there's not enough money in education. So if you want to kill the brother across the street who's wearing a red bandana and you got a blue one on, go ahead. I think that's the message that people are hearing.
That's not what I said at all.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe